Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how we create and instantiate a class in Python. Python is one of the most popular and widely used programming languages in the world right now, which is used to create websites, applications like Instagram and Dropbox. It is also used in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So without further ado, let's dive in and get started. So in order to create a class in Python, we define it using the class keyword. So we use the keyword class. So let's say you have a person. Now you want to create multiple instances of a person that you want to save in a database. Maybe it is a customer that is registering with your website or a mobile application. Now you need to store different customer related data into the database. In this case, you need to create a blueprint of an object so that whenever you want to create a person object, you don't have to define that function from scratch. So this is where classes comes to the rescue. So using the class keyword, we can create a blueprint of an object. So in this case, we're going to say class called person. So look at how I've structured this word person. Person starts with capital letter P. This is called Pascal naming conventions. There are many conventions out there that are used to name different variables and objects, but for classes, we use Pascal naming convention. So with capital letters first, and on each word, it has to be capital letter. Let me give you an example. Now, let's say you want to create a class called email client. You create email client using capital letter of the first word of each. Email starts with a capital letter and clients also start with capital letter. This is what we call Pascal naming convention, which is used in classes. So let's define person here. You put a colon here. Now, in order to create instances of a person, we use a special function in Python called a constructor. So a constructor is a function which is used to instantiate an object. It is a function that is actually called when an instance of that object is created. Now, this function in Python, you know that all the functions are created using the def keyword, which is actually the prefix that we use to define functions in Python. So def, which is short for define. So we're going to define a function. So since this is a special method that comes with all classes in Python, now look at the name of this. It is called double underscore init double underscore. When you press enter, Visual Studio Code is going to automatically put self in parentheses. So self is a reference to the current object. This means that here, when you create this object, it needs to have attributes. So now, in these brackets, you put properties of this object. In our case, a person has different properties. A person can have a name, can have nationality, color, etc. So in this case, I'm going to simplify things and put just a name over here. So after making this, the next thing that we have to do, we have to set this name attribute that we've defined in these brackets to the name attribute of this person. So we're going to say self.name equals name. Now, someone might ask, what is happening here? Self.name equals name. This means that we are setting the name attribute of the current object to the name parameter that is passed by the user. So in order for you to understand how this thing works, let me actually proceed. You see further as I'm going to create an instance of an object in Python. So after defining this special function, which is called the constructor that is used to actually instantiate an object, let's also define a second method here. You know that a person can talk. So we're going to define a function called talk. So now in parentheses here, we're going to put self. Each method needs to have self. So we're just going to return maybe a string in Python to say person is talking. So now you see how we have actually done this. So now there is a typo here on the return keyword. Now Let's come down here and create an instance of this object. For example, me equals person. In this parenthesis, I'm going to set my name here, for example, Jack. So now let's try to run this code in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to type me.talk. You see what Visual Studio Code is going to produce here. Let's run here Python app.py. You see person is talking. So essentially, this is how we create instances and define classes in Python.